these kinds of situations, I want you to imagine in the city of Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ, no one's stopping to say, are you okay? Dirt in his eyes, sand in his face. He would go home and his daughter Fatima would run crying to him, because imagine growing up seeing your dad going through this. And he would tell her, don't cry. He would wipe the tears from her eyes and he would say, Allah is going to defend me. That unshakable trust, right? They would take the insides of dead animals and throw it on him. They would put it in, they would sneak into his home and put it in the pot that he was going to cook his dinner in. They would take human waste and throw it at his door. They would attack him and choke him and make his life miserable. So much so that there were times when he would walk out, go through this, and the narration says he would just come back home and he would just not do what he had to do that day. He would just sit in his room and lower his head and he would just look distraught. Like, what do I do? The reason I'm telling you guys this is because when I read these narrations, I'm like, this is my prophet. The least I could do is try to be like him. I'm not going to be perfect, but the least I could do is be thankful enough. I don't get dirt thrown in my face. I don't have to go home and check my pots to make sure there's no dead animals in there. I don't have to look at my doorstep to make sure there's no waste on there. The least I could do as a person who believes in him is just try. And I'm going to fail. I'm going to stumble. But I'm going to keep trying. Because when I meet him, inshallah, say inshallah, when we meet him, I want to be able to at least tell him I tried. I don't want to have the conversation with him where I didn't. After all he went through. So you read these narrations and every one I read, it was like crushing my heart. Like, I'm the kind of guy that like cries at movies, as you can tell. It crushes me when I see people, like fictional characters, go through pain. It kills me. Now imagine this person lived really in real life and he did this for us and he went through this, subhanAllah. And there were moments where you cheer because Allah got his back. Abu Jahl one time was scheming to step on his neck while he was in sujood. He said, he puts his face in the dirt to worship his Lord. I'm going to go step on his head when he's doing it. And so all the Quraysh were like, yeah, and they all got around him. And when he went, Abu Jahl walked and he stopped and he stumbled backwards. So imagine you see him walking towards the Prophet, he stumbled backwards. And they're like, what's wrong? And Abu Jahl just says, you guys didn't see that? And they're like, what? And he's like, there was a massive pit of fire and there was like this demon looking at me. And the Prophet ﷺ, when the companions and him were talking about it later, he goes, that was Jibreel. And he goes, if he stepped 1 foot closer to me, Jibreel would have ripped him to pieces. He's like, God's got my back. Right? So there are narrations where like, yeah, boy, and you start wiping up the tears, right? But the empathy that we should have for the Prophet ﷺ, that we should feel this connection, this just immense gratitude. Thank you for doing that. That's why when I go make Umrah and I go in front of his resting place, I just say thank you. Because for me, I'm just like, what did I do to deserve this gift that you had to work so hard for? So we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us more prophetic. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the gift of being more prophetic and loving the Prophet ﷺ and appreciating the things he did for us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to purify our hearts from all the rust and the difficulties and different things that we struggle at and become better in our hearts and our souls and our actions. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. If there's anyone to relieve them, if there's anyone who's experiencing any loss or challenges, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give them strength. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Barakallahu feekum, everybody.